hello, here's yet another great client interview from the Software Engineering Accelerator with Fatiha. Fatiha is a sophomore, and before the program, she had no internships, no software engineering experience, basically nothing on her resume. And through the program, she got an amazing software engineering internship offer in her sophomore year with no experience. And she's in the final interview stages with yet another company, so I'm hoping that comes through. So she has multiple offers, and that goes to show the process really works as long as you stick to it and commit to it. So here's Fatiha. So Fatiha, if I remember correctly, you joined about maybe it was September. So it was the fall period. You're currently in your sophomore year at Princeton, correct? So could you kind of walk me through where were you before you joined the accelerator, what your background was?
Yeah, so before I joined the accelerator, I had 1 year of college under my belt, not really any internships, doing a few like computer science courses, getting involved with on campus and doing other things like that, but no like official job or any kind of like working position under the CS umbrella. So and I didn't really know anything about like the recruiting process. I mean, everything that I had done on my own was just like flying here and there, not really knowing strategies, how to connect with people, how to get like referrals and understanding that entire process. It's pretty, yeah.
And in your freshman year, had you applied for any software engineering internships? What was that process like?
I think in freshman year, I probably did a few, but I wasn't super serious about it. Wasn't super serious about working summer after freshman year. So I didn't really lock into that process.
Yeah, makes sense. And how did you feel about everything? I know you mentioned how you were just a little bit not super secure about how everything worked, but like, I guess in your heart, how did you feel about this process last summer?
Last summer it was like I'd be very scared to like sit down and start applying just because like I knew like I mean internally I knew that I didn't have really any qualifications or like anything to really show off in a sense that would be like attractive to like any employer, which is why I just had this fear that like I didn't want to sit down and do it because I knew that like I wasn't really going to get an offer. And then again, like before your course, I didn't know anything about how anything works. So I was just kind of like shooting in the dark. So it would always be like a pit in my stomach whenever my dad was like, okay, you should come and sit down and try to apply now. And I was like, well,
Yeah, that makes sense. So tell me, Fatia, what motivated you to actually reach out and book that call to consider enrolling in the accelerator?
well, I was like going on a YouTube deep dive trying to see like what advice other people had to get an internship. And I've seen your videos before. And I was just kind of going through the line, like different things to do throughout college or in the summer to get more experience, to get a job for the next summer. And I think as I was doing kind of like that deep dive, I had come across one of your recent videos about your software accelerator program. And I was like, well, like I've seen a lot of your videos. You seem like you know what you're doing. So it was something that I had thought of. I thought it would be helpful to have someone help me specifically for this. Because I think like, even though my dad is like, maybe you should try doing it on your own. I was like, well, yeah, like I could do it on my own, but I feel like starting from the beginning or not even the beginning, starting from where I am right now and having someone guide me who like knows how to like navigate all of this, like the processes very well. Like that would be very helpful rather than trying to do it on my own, failing for like half a year and then delaying however long until I like enrolled in any course or your course or whatever.
Yeah, makes sense. Now, when you were considering enrolling, did you have any kind of hesitations, anything holding you back, anything like that?
Yeah, for sure. I was like thinking about like, maybe should I try doing it myself? I think, I mean, you talked to my dad, there was also some hesitation from his end that influenced me too, which is why ended up having to do like the 40/60 payment thing. I was like a little hesitant, but I was more on the side of like, oh, I do want some guidance. So
hmm Yeah, makes sense. Now, kind of going into your actual experience in the accelerator, as you know, there's a bunch of different aspects. We do your resume and LinkedIn. We help you with behavioral interviews, coding interviews, stuff like that. So why don't we walk through that experience? How did you feel like the resume and LinkedIn help was?
That was very helpful in the beginning. I think those are like the two things that I had most like spent time on because those are the things that I could directly kind of affect. Um, so I would always be like looking at my LinkedIn, always trying to like make my resume a little better. So definitely like having your input and kind of breaking it down and going through like tips that would make my resume a little stronger, having more like impact words and having more descriptions. Like that was definitely helpful. I think it was a good place to start. I think it gave me a good kind of like, okay, I don't have to get into the meat of the program right now. Let me focus on the things I already know and then kind of like assimilate into the rest of the program.
Yeah, makes sense. And kind of going to resume help. I feel like a lot of people they've looked at their resume. I mean, no one's coming to a program without putting at least a few hours into the resume, right? So did
Mhm.
you feel like the program advice, me looking at your resume, kind of really tearing it apart, was that helpful beyond the work you already did? Did you feel like it did make a difference going forward?
Yeah, I think so. I think it depends on like what you already had as your resume. I think for me, I had already watched like a lot of videos on how to like make like a good resume and I'd always like been up to date with my LinkedIn. So I feel like maybe I didn't have like a reckoning as much as maybe someone else who didn't put as much time in it, but I definitely think like it was helpful just because there's always a way to improve whatever it is. So even if like you gave me a tip to like increase one or two sentences, I feel like in this type of like area for jobs, like anything that you do can be very important. So I appreciated it.
Awesome. Yeah, makes sense. Kind of going to your referrals situation here. So, how did you feel like the referral advice was? I think a lot of people, they know referrals are important, but most people just don't know what to do to get referrals. So, did you feel like the content, the guidance, the strategy when it came to getting referrals was helpful? And did you end up getting referrals through that process?
Yeah, I definitely didn't know anything about referrals beforehand. But I definitely like I wasn't even on like the idea of I should get referrals before your program. So definitely watching all your videos, I was able to like how like I definitely did get like several sorry, there are like other people here.
No
I
worries.
definitely did get like a lot more referrals after I went through all of your processes. I was more like keen on who I was like linking with or connecting with on LinkedIn. I was more organized. Like I reached out to like so many different, not random people, but people in other companies that had been able to give me a referral. I did get like several like Zoom interviews and calls, which was great. So definitely like starting from where I was, which was like zero, I definitely like learned a lot in your referral module.
Awesome. Yeah, sounds great. It's what I love to hear. Let's talk about the interview prep. So, did you end up? I know it was a few months ago, so I'm not particularly remember what you did here. But did you do the behavioral coding interviews, and how were those? If you use those?
Yes, I did all of them, minus like one coding interview, I think.
Mhm.
I definitely think it took me a while to get into it, just because of that fear factor. I was like, okay, let me just utilize like my coaching calls, and I didn't I, me and my mom are very similar in this matter. Like I wanted to put off like the behavioral and the coding interview as much as possible, just because I knew that once again, like I didn't have confidence that I'd be able to do it. So um, I remember like it took a lot out of me to do like that first behavioral interview. But then I remember like the first time I had done or said anything to you, you were like, oh, like it wasn't that bad. Like obviously I had tips, but you said it was like, oh, for your first time, it wasn't that bad, which gave me a little more confidence. And then I went to like the next few. And then I felt the same way for, honestly, I think I felt better about the coding interview because I knew that you weren't going to be the one to listen in. Because like once Nikhil came, I was like, okay, great, now I can do it. Like just I mean it didn't have anything to do with, I think it was just like intimidation of like doing a coding interview with you. So definitely I think having because you're always like heading this program, you're talking to all of your students, like you're the one person that like everyone's like already getting advice from, and I think that intimidation fear is like very big. So the fact that you're like kind of outsourcing it to some other people who are not in the spotlight as much as you are might be very helpful, or it is or was helpful for me at least. um but yeah, I think the main thing is I would just be very anxious to do them. Like it took a like I had to force myself to really attend them. I don't know if that's just like a me thing, but um I don't know, for some reason in my head I was like, oh, this is like super high stakes. Like if I fail, they're gonna laugh at me. Like it was type of that, it was that type of thing going on. But I mean, once I did it, definitely gave me experience. I liked the fact that I was able to do it, but just getting into it was the difficult part.
Yeah, definitely. And I appreciate the honesty. I think a lot of people have that fear, but they're not willing to confront it and just be honest with the fact that these things are scary, right? It is not
Yeah.
easy to do like a technical interview or behavioral interview. When it comes to the prep, did you feel like it did end up helping you in your interviews, like the behavioral interview system, the technical interview system? What are your thoughts there?
Yeah. I think that I no, I definitely think that like doing the mock interviews gave me confidence for like the real things. Maybe perhaps like because I've honestly I think about this a lot because I thought about your videos about how like you could get so many interviews, but like your success ratio is going to be super low. I've taken two interviews and I've gotten both of them. So like as a very bad, it's a very bad like statistic to go off of. But I think definitely for those ones, like I had more confidence, especially the behavioral part, just because it's more like talking about yourself and there's only like that doesn't change. The changing like the technical part that changes like whatever they give you. But definitely having because I didn't have any idea of like what a technical interview looked like before. Like I've watched YouTube videos online of like mock interviews, but it's different when you're watching rather than doing it because you can't stay silent. You need to be talking. You need to try to, they're giving you hints if you don't get it. So like definitely that gave me a lot more insight because when I took my second interview and I had to like go through like SQL and HTML and Java, like I was making sure to like not be quiet and try to like walk through my process. And even if I got stuck, I was like trying to iterate what was going through my head. So it wasn't like I was just drawing a blank. So it was definitely helpful after I pushed myself to do it.
Awesome. Yeah, great to hear. Let's talk about your actual interviews here. So you said in the end you ended up having two interviews. Did you have any more or just those two interviews?
Like as in I had two official interviews.
Mhm.
I had more like OAs, but I think as in like sit down interviews, I only had two from Tyler
Got it.
Tech and Fidelity.
Awesome. So Tyler Tech and Fidelity. And I guess you mentioned it earlier. You ended up getting both offers. So first of
Yeah,
all, congratulations. That's an amazing outcome. So
thank
why don't
you.
you kind of talk me through both those offers? Like what was the you don't have to talk about the interviews themselves, but timeline, what was the actual offer, location, and which one did you end up going with?
Yeah, so I applied to Tyler Tech. I think when I checked, it was like super early on in the fall. It was just one of those ones that I checked out. I didn't get a referral for that one or anything. And they reached out to me in the beginning of the semester. They asked me to do an like a OA assessment. Did that. Then I got a phone call with the recruiter and then or HR, and they were like, we're gonna set up an interview. And then the interview was fine. It was like verbally technical. It wasn't like coding technical, more like concepts that I had to answer. And then I got the offer like right around Thanksgiving break, I believe. And I accepted it then. And so now I'm going through I accepted it then, which will lead me to my later dilemma. And that offer is good. It's for the summer. It starts like in May. I think it was 25 an hour in Texas, pretty close to my home. So that was a really good offer. And then for Fidelity, I had applied to Fidelity in the beginning of November. I didn't hear back from them until like beginning of February. And it was just like a recruiter call, and she was like, "Okay, can you have an interview?" And then I had the interview with like all of the technical, like it was just that one interview with the one interviewer. And then I got the offer a few days later in the beginning of, or in like mid February. And that internship starts at the beginning of June. It's like 30 minutes away from my house. It's 34 an hour, I believe. And I will be going with Fidelity.
Amazing. Well,
Yeah.
congratulations. Both incredible offers and super proud of you. I guess final question here. What would you say to someone who is just like you, sophomore, similar background, struggling with the internship process, and is considering joining the accelerator? So I guess in the end, would you say the accelerator was worth it? Did you feel like it was helpful when it comes to getting that internship in software engineering?
Yeah, I would say if you're most likely thinking about joining an accelerator, it's probably because you don't know where to start. Maybe just because like YouTube and Google can only get you so far. But if you're genuinely thinking about joining the program, I think it was definitely a worthwhile investment. Even as a college student who like paid the majority of it, like I think it's definitely worth it because like, and I know that you're still creating content too. So I'm sure there's more content for people who are in it now than when I was. And there's just so much knowledge that, I mean, I'm sure that everything that you get is not only out of experience, but also Google, but having someone to directly speak with about these things was super helpful for me. Um, Personally, like the fear factor was something I had to work out on my own, but having someone on like this and like even I know that like you were busy, but even I was able to ask you several questions if I needed it. I was able to reach out to Ella, and there was also like the entire community that's also there to ask questions. And I think like I appreciated the fact because I didn't have any knowledge about this stuff and like I guess like internships, jobs, like those are serious things. Like you need to be serious about it. So I personally think it was a worthwhile investment because it wasn't something that I had any prior knowledge about. And my parents are like first gen, so like as much as they know about this stuff, they didn't. I feel like it's a little different for me than what is for them. So also having like that's why I also kind of considered you because you would have known a lot more about this process than my dad knows about it. So I would definitely consider it and think it's a good purchase.
Yeah, great. Well, thank you for doing the interview. I really appreciate it.